Welcome everyone out there to What the Fuck VA. I'm Albert Winks, the veteran money strategist, and I do self-promote and self-sponsor. So we'll talk about some stuff that I do, and then I'll have the gentlemen here, Tim and Mike, introduce themselves. But I started this podcast because although I've helped over 3,000 of my clients, all the way up to the best and deadliest in the world, receive $3 to $5 million each, over $10 billion delivered in less than 5 years. I feel like I'm still not helping enough. And I just want to get that out there and start, let's say 2023 was a badass year for us. And now 24 and beyond, we want to really partner and really get a lot more content out there. Say, here's what we're doing, and here's what other great veterans and other Fs, as we'll call them here in a little bit, like faith and family and fitness and stuff like that. That was going to make it more clear to you, positive Fs. But so some self-sponsoring things before I turn it over to the guys is, as you know, I am the best in the world at what I do, the Fulfilled Veteran Project. Look me up on my website. It is .com. We are a for-profit, help deliver over $3 million to every client of mine, and comes out to about 10 billion now, over 10 billion now. So in less than 5 years, working all the way up to SEAL teams and Delta dudes are mine, Air Force One, Marine One, all that stuff. So you know that trust and performance is the key. And, money does make the world go round. It's your money. So talk to me about it. I'm the only one that can tell you that. Let's see what else we got going on. Other things. We're doing different campaigns over this year too. So a lot of partnership stuff. You'll hear me talk about my book coming out, and book series coming out. I've got a contract signed. His name is Trevor Crane. Look him up. He's my book publisher, and I've known him for a couple of years, but we had some stuff I needed to put front burner. Now I'm back with him, and we got a whole book series coming out. And he and I had what was supposed to be a half an hour meeting turned into a two hour meeting. Just he and I just whiteboarding, bouncing shit off each other. So, but yeah, we'll talk about a lot of that today and get into more on that. But 2024, we do want to partner a lot with people. You hear me circle that back. So if you have other Fs for fulfillment, so faith, family, fitness, fun, food, all that stuff, if you're involved with that at your church, or you've got a clothing line or cigars or bourbon or whatever it is, and you want to be around other cool people, please talk to me, and please reach out to me through my website or my email. Email address is albert@thefulfilledveteranproject.com. So just want to let you know. We've got apparel stuff coming up too. We've got a great apparel company out of Nashville, and we've got some apparel stuff going on our website. We've had to wait for a while for some paperwork to come through on some kind of tax. I said property tax, sales tax. So we're just waiting on that to be finalized to go live with that. And we will be, once that's done, we'll be up and running fully on Public Square. I was going to call it something backwards. Public Square, which is like the Amazon for conservatives. So make sure you check us out on Public Square. All that info will be on my website and all that kind of stuff too, different announcements and everything. So let's just get started here. We'll talk about other stuff and more as we keep going. But let me turn it over to Tim and Mike and have them introduce themselves. Mike is trying to work out camera stuff, but he's on his phone right now. But Tim and I have had a little bit of chat beforehand. And so I'll turn it over to Tim first. Tim, tell us a little bit about yourself, just a 1 or 2 minute, what you did in the service, what you're doing now.
Sure. Thanks, Albert. My name's Tim Gorey. I got into the United States Air Force in 1990, about 2 weeks after I graduated from high school. I spent 4 years in the service. It was great alternative to going to college for me. I had no interest in continuing school at that time in my life. Didn't like school all that much, other than the fact that I was hanging out with good friends of mine like Mike. And so I got into the Air Force. I actually signed up for the Air Force with my buddy Dave before I even started my senior year in high school. So for those of you who don't know what that is, that's a delayed entry program, and you can sign up way before you go and get a date and all that stuff. So I knew my entire senior year in high school that I was leaving to go to the Air Force 2 weeks after I graduated, and did that. And my job in the Air Force was communications, computer systems operator. And so I worked in a couple of different sort of frameworks for that. One was a comm center where back then the military was one of the only organizations actually using the internet back then to send classified messages back and forth between bases. And we were basically glorified mailmen where we would receive and send those messages, authenticate them, and make sure that they got to the people that were supposed to get those messages on base. And then also another, part of my job was I worked in a computer data center, and that one I liked a lot more. It was more computer centric. It was about editing and developing programs, running supply databases for the base, keeping track of things going on and off the base via aircraft, and printing paychecks for everybody on the base, those kinds of things. And that really was kind of the jumping of my career in IT. And when I was in the Air Force, I was stationed at two places. The Torrejon Air Base right outside of Madrid, Spain, from 90 to 92. And then 92 to 94, I was at March Air Force Base in Southern California, that is close to a city called Riverside. And so that's my short military story.
What are you doing now?
Today, now I spent my entire career in California, 25 years working in schools. I was an IT person, software developer, ultimately a chief technology officer for a large school district for 13 years. Spent 4 years as a chief communications officer for a school district. Retired from that a couple of years ago and moved to Branson, Missouri, which is where I live now. And I have a couple of businesses. One is called Baton Pass, and it focuses on leadership training and coaching and leadership consulting in the IT space. So I have most of my clients are either large IT departments that are doing reorganizations, setting up mentorship programs, wanting training for their leaders, or individuals who are moving from being an IT person to a manager or a leader for the first time, and they're trying to get their head around what it means to be a leader, a people leader, coming from being a technology manager, and making that transition. So I help those folks make that transition. And then I also have a small business that I'm working on with a partner called City Center, that is all about helping high schools create businesses, real businesses that students can run, where they can make real money for the high school and get real experience, doing marketing, providing marketing services for local businesses that are around the high school. So we facilitate that process, provide the training and the structure for the schools to be able to do that, as well as AI-enabled software tools that facilitate that process. And so that's a brand new thing. And then we're in the process of getting grants to develop the cutting edge software that'll run that whole thing. So that's what I'm up to.
And you said grants. So is that like through, is it like a nonprofit, or are you just looking for venture capital?
Great question. We'd rather not get venture capital because that is associated with giving up significant amounts of control.
Hell yes. Oh my God.
Right.
Don't do it.
Mike knows, like those, the venture capitalists, they can bring a lot of money if you've got a great idea, but
Take over.
They own you.
Yeah.
Right. And so we don't want to do that if we can help it. And so, no, yeah, we have a kind of a two-tiered strategy. I'm pretty excited about, actually. We're right in the middle of it. And that is, we've partnered with a nonprofit organization called the School to Business Association, that will be going after nonprofit directed grants and then contracting with us to do the work that the grant requires.
Yeah.
And then we're also going after for-profit grants that do exist for startup companies who are doing significant developing novel technologies. And that's through the National Science Foundation, which is a government organization But they have, for anybody who's actually doing something novel, doing research and development around something brand new. And today with AI technologies and the things that are happening, there's lots of opportunity for that. So any veterans, especially who have an idea that are along those lines, there's a grant out there that is constantly running, where you just give a sort of like a pitch to them, and then if they like your pitch, they invite you to go for the full grant. And the first year, phase one of the full grant is $275,000 free money. They don't get any ownership of your IP. They don't get any ownership of your company. They're just giving you money to try to develop this sort of moonshot idea. And if that first phase goes well, you get $275,000, and that first phase goes well, and you accomplish your phase one objectives, you can then get a phase two grant that is up to $1 million. So, yeah.
We're already off and running. We're already off and doing good things, and Mike hasn't even introduced himself yet.
Yeah.
Go back to that, Tim. You're definitely leaving out a lot of stuff to talk about too. Mike, fire away.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. My name is Mike DeArmond. I am a system/network administrator. I have been since I was 15. When Tim and I and Dave were in high school, I think it was late sophomore year, early junior year, I can't remember which. But the school got a great big grant, bought a whole bunch of computers, set up a Mac lab in one room, set up a PC lab in another. And the principal of our high school at that time, Mr. Brooks, was a very smart man as far as leadership goes. Because as soon as these computers were on school grounds, he called a meeting of the department heads. The math department had one network, the English department had another. And he said, okay, who's the kid who can fuck this up the most? And apparently my name universally came up. And so he said, cool, put him in charge. And so literally I got yanked out of class, and I was told I'm in charge of this Macintosh network. I'm like, cool, what does that mean? And the principal looked at me and said, you're going to have to figure that out. Well, the very next day I figured it out, because the very next day was, I believe, the start of our junior year term paper section in English. And every English teacher for that year, for our year, was doing an entire semester on writing a term paper. 3/4 of that curriculum was devoted to making 3x5 note cards, rough drafts, and how to create a justified double-spaced paper on an electromechanical typewriter. And I'm sitting here watching her write all of this out on the board, and I'm like, holy shit, we don't need any of this. And so after class, I said, hey, I want to go show you something on this computer network we have next door. It's going to change the way you look at this term paper. And I was immediately met with, hey, don't reinvent the wheel. I'm like, this has nothing to do with reinventing the wheel, right? And so I took 15 minutes and showed the head of the English department how to do everything she was talking about as far as note cards, notations, double space, justified, etc. in 10 minutes. Showed her how to do it on a word processor. Specifically, I believe at the time it was McWrite. Am I remembering that correctly? Yeah. And so 15 minutes into it, I saw the light bulbs go off in her eyes. She knew, she understood. I'm like, cool. And so instead of spending an entire semester learning how to create a double-spaced justified paper on an electromechanical typewriter, I spent the entire semester teaching the entire English department and all the English students how to use the McWrite word processor and save data to a floppy drive and print it.
Yeah.
When I joined the Air Force, that job kind of continued. It was a very much different flavor. My job title does not exist anymore in the Air Force. It was a computer technical controller, and that was troubleshooting all electronic communications gear. right? So it didn't matter if it was a computer, a modem, a telephone trunk line, whatever. If it went down, I got a ticket. I had to troubleshoot the problem and then send out the appropriate technician to fix it. So when Tim couldn't receive messages, he would call somebody in my shop that had my title, even though I wasn't on his base, to get the problem fixed. And that's all been turned into software now, right? Nobody uses an electromechanical step-by-step telephone switch anymore. And I didn't do a full 4 years. I did like 3.2 years or something, because much like Tim's base at March Air Force Base, I was at Norton, which was like a 30-minute drive away in San Bernardino. My base was closing too, and they said, hey, what do you want to do? Do you want to re-up for 6 years, or do you want to get out early? And I'm like, really? You're asking me this question? And so I got out a little bit early because the base was closing. And I'm like, you know what? I am so done with IT and computer stuff. I'm going to go do something the complete polar opposite. I'm going to get involved in law enforcement. And so I spent close to 10 years doing that. And I realized how much that job fucking sucks. Because no matter how bad things get in an IT job, I am never going to have to even look or edit a report about how some tweaker beat a 4-year-old to death with an 8-inch cast iron skillet. Yeah. And I also won't have to, deal with the person who tackled that guy through a plate glass window and put a bullet in his head going to court for making the world a better place. I mean, legally, was that the appropriate thing to do? Yeah, absolutely. Right? There's a reason we have laws like that. But there was not a doubt in my mind that that man made the world a better place that day, and he had to stand trial for it. Now, it took the jury all of 10 minutes to come back with a unanimous not guilty verdict, and the prosecutor apologized to the guy for having to prosecute him, but it still happened, and he lost his job and couldn't work in law enforcement anymore. And that's when I realized there's a leadership problem. I couldn't articulate that at the time. It took me a lot of time to figure it out. But yeah, 90% of the people who work in leadership roles are not leaders. Tim had an excellent way of putting it. They're managers, and people should never be managed. You can manage computers, you can manage things, you can even manage animals, but people, unless you're in a prison, should not be managed. This is the absolute wrong way to go. And so I got out of law enforcement and I got back into IT simply because it's really easy and it pays nice, right? The only time I have to work late or on the weekend is if I've screwed something up and I now have to fix it. And worst case scenario, oh man, I really screwed this up. I'm going to have to rebuild the server from scratch. Man, this is going to suck. I'm not going to get to sleep till 2 a.m. this morning. That's a lot better than not sleeping because of the report you read that day. And in IT, it was really nice because there's not a lot of arguments in IT. It's a math problem. And so if you say, hey, we should do this in 1, 2, 3, if I say, no, we should do it 2, 3, 1, here's the reason why this is X% faster. There's no arguing with that. It's a straight up math problem. And if you don't believe me, we can put it to the test and we can find out. Right? So that made me a lot happier. And then after a particularly interesting large IT project with a company called Era Energy in Bakersfield. Era Energy's an oil company. It's an oil company that, unless you're from the Kern County area, you've never heard of. And the reason why is because it's basically a dumping ground for Chevron, Texaco, Shell, and there's one other I can't remember. But all these oil companies put their least profitable assets together in this one LLC as a giant tax write-off, right? Now, oil companies being an oil company, as long as oil's coming out of the ground, they're making obscene amounts of money, right? So that's kind of weird. But yeah, there was a big project there. And the reason why the project happened at all is because they fired like 80% of their IT department all at once. And I'm showing up there, we're doing work, we're getting stuff fixed. And I'm like, this is a really nice IT shop. Your network is set up very intelligently. Why did everybody get fired? And apparently what had happened is they had started working remotely. And they just didn't tell anybody. And nobody knew for like 3 years, because if there was a problem, they called the IT department, put in a ticket, they fixed it. And the only reason they ever found out is because one of the vice presidents walked down to the IT room and there was nobody there. And he picked up the phone and called him. And he's like, yeah, what can we do for you? And we're like, where the hell are you guys? What do you mean? And that pissed him off that they pretty much fired the entire department and replaced them all. And I thought to myself, as soon as I heard that, I said, that's dumb. They should have promoted those people. That's how much floor space in this office did that free up? Because they're in some of those valuable real estate in town, right? Their offices are right down there by that new Edwards Cinema area. Right across the street from that great big huge building, right? So that was kind of a wake-up call. But on that project, there was a whole bunch of people that wound up working for this company called Kaseya, which is an RMM management tool. Unless you're very much into IT, you probably won't have ever heard about them at all. But RMM tools allow you to automate IT processes, management, maintenance, repair, that sort of thing. And so one day out of the blue, a friend of mine calls me and says, hey man, what are you doing? I said, nothing particularly worthwhile. Why? What do you got? He said, well, I'm working at this company called Kaseya and they need somebody to, train people how to use their product. I'm like, cool, let's, show me the software. So I got a link to a video demo and I watched it and I'm like, holy crap, I'm out of a job. This is going to automate everything I do. Hey, can you guys hear me? Am I locked up? Okay, cool. Everything just froze for a second. And that really turned out to be the launch point because I was very successful there. Kaseya was very successful. Everything was awesome until they got bought out by a venture capital company. And that is when I learned firsthand venture capitalists, investors, getting bought out by a big existing organization. None of these people can even contemplate the concept of something new. They can only do what everybody else has already been doing. And in technology, that's like trying to get a 4-year degree for something that changes every year and a half, right? Specifically, the
you mean like how college really is? Actually,
yeah, right.
yeah, right. Like my specific example is okay. So you're going to get a bachelor's degree in computer science in an industry where the life cycle of a workstation is 3 years, the life cycle of a server is 5 years, and now you have something completely different.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it's just not that relevant. It's very difficult. I remember taking computer science classes in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I'm like, why are we learning the history of Pascal? Nobody uses this programming language anymore, and you've spent a week talking about it.
Yeah. That's such an important piece, I think, of, I know, my life right now, and I'd mentioned pieces of it that, I think it actually that concept is tearing apart the fabric of our culture.
Yes.
In a lot of ways right now. I mean,
Agreed.
I look at high schools and even middle school and elementary schools, and kids are starting to understand, like they come in and they're like, there's nothing here that's actually relevant to anything in the real world. And people wonder why, I was just having a conversation the other day with somebody. They're like, why are our schools performing so badly? Why do kids not give a crap? And it's like, because
there's no relevance to real life.
Do what they did 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago.
Yes.
The world has changed so much. It's becoming more and more, schools are becoming more and more irrelevant to the world outside of school.
And the rate of that change is increasing more than exponentially.
Yeah. It's nuts.
A really good example, it's a friend of mine. He owns a franchise business. It's what's it called? It's not H&R Block. It's Liberty Tax, right? Liberty Tax. So we were having a conversation a couple of weeks ago. He's like, man, if I could just create some process to automatically pull the W-2 information out of an email and put it into my tax software, I wouldn't have to hire employees. And I'm like, dude, we worked together at Kaseya for 5 years automating shit. Let's sit down and do this. So we did. I'm like, well, where do we start? You know what? Let's pull up that Bing Chat AI and see what it can do. And so I said, hey, Bing Chat AI, can you create me a PowerShell script to scrape an email address for W-2 information and plug it into these fields in this tax software? It kicked out a PowerShell script. Copy, paste, ran, worked first time.
Yeah.
So now I'm in the process of, I want to try to do that for other crappy work from home jobs like data entry and whatnot. Because if I can get 5 to 10, $40,000, $30,000 a year jobs automated, then I'm not going to answer IT tickets anymore.
Right.
And that's going to put a lot of entry level people out of work for good. There is going to be no more.
Are you like Tim, wearing multiple hats, and you got other companies going on too? What's going on there?
Well, okay. So for a while, I was doing the overemployed thing, working 2 to 3 sysadmin jobs at a time because I was good enough at it that I can do the work of 3 people and still have 5 hours a day left over. Right? You build up a big enough script repository combined with the fact that AI can write scripts faster than I can, and now all of a sudden this stuff becomes trivial. And so when I was doing this, at first I had a lot of emotional turmoil. I felt like I was cheating somehow, breaking a rule. Yeah, sure, I'm cheating. Absolutely, I'm breaking rules that don't exist. It's not illegal to work 2 jobs.
Right.
It's not even immoral to work 2 jobs.
Yeah.
And none of these people, I mean, they were competitors in the fact that most of them were MSPs, but an MSP out of New York doesn't care about one out of Colorado.
Right.
Yeah.
They tend to be pretty regional.
And so I was doing that, and eventually I just realized, hey, you know what? I'm treating these jobs like a business treats a client. So I'm just going to start referring to them that way as clients.
Yeah.
And I remember specifically in the MSP space when I was, being a Kaseya cheerleader and talking to all these other technology people, hey guys, do not be afraid to fire a client, right? Yeah, this client's giving you $100,000 a month. Great. Fire them and replace them with 10 just like them, but with 10 people that are on board with your process instead of taking up all your time. Mm-hmm. And, that's when I realized, hey, employees are our most valuable resource. Let's find out if that's true. Let's spin this. Employers are my most valuable resource. I buy, sell, trade, consume, and discard resources as best meets my financial wants. And all of a sudden, that was just this hugely liberating thing, because it's business, right? Businesses gain contracts, they lose contracts, and they don't really care either way, as long as they can continue to replace the ones they lost. And so rather than feeling like, oh my God, I'm compromising my employer, I'm not giving 100%, blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? You're never going to get promoted. The only way you get promoted today is to go to another job. What's your alternative? Wait for somebody to die?
Yeah. Well, it occurs to me, Mike, and Albert, for your audience, there's a real huge opportunity right now for people who are good process thinkers. And if I could identify one thing that most people who have been in the military have, is they're good at thinking about processes. They generally are process people, because that's been well trained into them, right? Is making decisions, good decisions quickly,
Yes.
and setting up processes where you can replicate something and do it over and over and over again, reliably. That's a lot of the work that happens in the military, no matter what job you're in.
Yep.
And so, and I know that IT people, I've always told people when I work in large organizations that have IT departments, I always tell other people who don't understand IT people are primarily process people.
Yes.
They really, you don't want to just think of them as technology people. But if you really want to, leverage them, you want to bring them into planning processes for anything in the organization, because they're the ones that are going to say, this is the straightest line between point A and point B, right?
You know what? We have entire laws that have been written because people didn't do that. HIPAA compliance, PCI compliance, right?
Right.
All of these things exist because some CEO said, no, we don't need to patch once a month. That's a big problem. It creates downtime, and then we're fixing things for 2 or 3 days afterwards. That's just 100% not acceptable. And the IT department's going, so you want to get crypto locker? Okay.
Yeah.
And then he said, oh, we're not going to get crypto locker. We'll be fine. Guess what happened? Right?
Yeah. And I think, that opportunity that presents itself around AI and the things that are happening right now, the people who are able to leverage AI to create new businesses and to create new processes that make them money and help other people, do things better. The people that are able to do that are people who are good at processes, good at step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, logically thinking through those processes and understanding that these AI tools, for the most part, you almost have to, the best way to deal with them a lot of times is to treat them like another really intelligent human being and interrogate them as such, give them the kind of context that a smart human who doesn't understand what you want to do needs in order to help you do what you want to do. And people who are process people who can really leverage that skill and learn some basic things about how to prompt AI can really do well in the next couple of years, starting new businesses or solving particular problems.
I find that interesting.
Huge opportunity for veterans.
No, I agree. I'm just kind of, the end result is the same, but my train of thought kind of came from the other side, because I explain things to the AI like an idiot child that needs every single step explained to them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They know all this stuff. AI knows, it's like a child that knows all this stuff, but they don't understand the context.
You can't put it together.
Yeah. So you have to provide the context. If you can provide context, say, this is what I want, be very specific, about what you're trying to accomplish and give it background information about why you want to do that and where your knowledge comes from and where you've identified the problem you're trying to solve, it can be extremely helpful for you.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I just, like that's one of the things that kind of occurred to me as you were talking, Mike, was just that, many veterans, I think, are in a perfect position mentally to be able to take advantage of what's happening right now and start businesses and solve real world problems.
Sounds like you could take the whole global E4 mafia and just say, hey, do this easier.
You could.
And they'll get it done.
You absolutely could. I know so many people, like I worked for 6 months up at Intel out of, wasn't Portland, it was a suburb, not a suburb, just kind of like outside Portland called Hillsboro. They had a particularly large facility there. And the guy who was the project manager, he was still active duty Marine Corps on his first day to work. He was on terminal leave. And he was 100% hired for his organizational abilities and nothing else.
Well, that brings me to another point I want to tell you about too. Just to give you guys some context of who you're talking to, not just me, but my people, is out of my 3,000 clients, most of them are special operators and other high caliber folks. Those other high caliber folks are going to be, pilots and all that kind of stuff, but also including, I can't tell you how many IT people I have. I can't tell you how many people who are cyber. So when I get on LinkedIn myself and I'm looking up someone, or when I did before, and I would look up mostly like something that would make sense. Green Beret, SEAL, Ranger, MARSOC, fighter pilot, helicopter pilot, cyber. I would look up those guys to find out and connect with them so that they know about me and how to get their money in their pocket, and they can just rest their fun is out in front of them the rest of their life. So, but well, let me ask you guys this as far as like a transitional piece of, correct me if I'm wrong, my knowledge base of, I know IT means a lot, cyber means a lot, but usually what cyber folks have a bachelor's degree, IT can be come right in, understand people, process, help me understand that better from context to other conversation here.
Educational wise, no one cares about your education in IT. No one even cares about certifications anymore because we've seen too many paper tigers. What everybody cares about is, can you do the job? And so in the interview, they're going to ask you, do you know how to do this using this tool? And if you can walk them through the process just in a conversation, then you've got the job. Unless, there's somebody who does it better than you do. Right?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that where you'll find the requirements of bachelor degrees is in sort of holdovers that are behind, like government jobs.
healthcare and education.
Yeah, but the people that are on the cutting edge, the technology companies and that sort of stuff, they've already dispensed with those types of requirements. And they're looking for particular types of thinkers. And they're using other methods to identify them other than paper methods.
If you look at any of the job advertisements descriptions for IT positions outside of healthcare, education, and government, it will say this degree or equivalent experience.
Yeah, that's good. Because my wife, she's a project manager for a big IT firm, that kind of thing, and they usually would years ago hire kids straight out of college, and then you find out same thing, like as a project manager, you're playing your mom or dad to a pod of a very small amount of people who may be well-intentioned, but if they're 22, 23 years old, even with a degree, they don't know anything. They know how to do kickstands or whatever, but they don't know how to critically think yet, or maybe have those how to be a team player. So my point that I'm going to keep coming back to is, like, I think we're talking about the paper tiger point that Mike said, is that it is about people. It is about, dare I say, the soft skills of with my staff and what I have to do. I'm a problem solver for a multi-million-dollar problem for every single client. And it's very emotional. I'm like, hey man, I'm here to help you get your money. You earned it. Let's go get it. It's through compliant paperwork. And so although we may deal with some emotions with every client, it's like you guys have already addressed. I get to fire clients. If I don't like them, I don't want them. If they don't want me, I don't give a shit. Like I've gotten to that point too. I'm like, I'm okay with that. I was in and out of the Army for over a 16-year period, 10 years. I did everything from infantry in the Army in the 90s, drove Bradleys over in Germany, medically ousted in 2000.
How did you not go crazy?
In which one?
In the Army.
Oh, well, because then I went to ROTC and I got to be a pilot. So I flew medevac missions. And
that
so,
makes sense.
But it's crazy too. Even for the people in the medevac world or Army world will tell you that medevac somehow is a lot of people trying to eat each other. And I wasn't one of them. And come back to your point, smartest people in the world, and you think in some of the most intensely care-driven, like a medevac pilot, some of those people are horrible fucking humans. So like a Navy SEAL says, the best people in the world are Navy SEALs, the worst people in the world are fucking Navy SEALs. So, and I identify that shit real fast with the people I want to be around and the people I don't want to be around. And I'm 43, so I've lived long enough and been around enough people to know I don't deal with that shit anymore. I want to do this. I want to have a cocktail at fucking, noon on Friday because I own the fucking company and I'm delivering a lot of money to my people and that's my fucking prerogative. But yeah, and that's why I'm glad we're having this fireside chat because we're diving a lot into what we're going to get into here shortly. At any time, if you want to talk about your transition from military service and how the government's hiding a bunch of money from you and stuff like that. But I think you guys are going to want, since you know each other really well, I think you're going to want me to start talking about the future. Because when I was growing up in the 80s, I would talk about in the 80s, 90s, and even in the earlier 2000s, you could go, man, what's the world going to be like 10 years from now? Now you have no fucking clue. So you guys are talking about, chat GPTs, write this thing for me, and Alexa, drive my car for me, or whatever. Tech is there, and I like that Tim said it this way. Tech is a very, very smart, like an autistic baby that you have to tell everything that you want out of it, and it can be helpful and harmful at the same time. So, what do you guys think the next 5-10 years looks like with tech, local, global? Like, can we be? We could be, I believe, America could be, because of people like us, magnificent. I'll use Donald Trump as an example. He wants to build brand new cities. I don't think a brand new city's been built since Vegas, maybe. But what if somebody did a brand new city somewhere and it was very tech driven and it was low government? Get the fuck out of my pocket, government. Get the fuck out of my way, government, because there's so many toxic people in government. They just slow things down just to verify their own fucking jobs. What if we said, hey, let's just get a bunch of fucking doers in one area and just from soup to fucking nuts have this like super city? And what could that look like? Maybe I'm sure you guys talk about that. So I'll sit back again and listen to you guys. What do you think?
So, like, barriers to that sort of thing up until very recently have been, you need somebody with a great big giant pile of money to start this off.
Right.
And that person has to be willing to literally throw a torch on that pile of money, burn it all to the ground, because if it fails, that's what you've just done, right? Well, excluding Elon Musk, there's a massive shortage of people with great big giant piles of money that they're willing to light on fire.
Well, there's the government. They light piles of fire on them.
No, they light other people's money on fire.
That's fair statement. I was going to say, there's $85 billion worth of our stuff in Afghanistan.
Yeah, right. So, okay, here's a much better example. You did not see new features or new firearms in the firearms industry hardly ever until recently. And the reason for that is the cost of tooling up to produce was huge. Well, now it's just a new file. You know, and when I mean file, I mean software file, right? A new CAD file, a new print file, etc. Whereas before, you know, it was tool and die makers working for 6 months to create the process, with the tools to make the process. Now we just we're going to print this frame instead of that frame. Awesome. 2 to 3 days.
3D printers, you know, you can use 3D.
Yeah.
So I've been to a lot of conventions in DC and stuff for special operations, things like that. So when are we going to get to a point where you could be like, hey, I want this fucking M1 tank or this fucking helicopter 3D print? I don't know if it's going to work that way, but like
you can do it right now if you were patient enough.
Yeah.
The biggest drawback is large metal parts need to be heat treated post printing. Right? That's our big stopgap right now. But these firearm companies are already 3D printing suppressors out of titanium and Inconel, which both of which are, I don't know if you've ever had to work with them before, but they're a pain in the ass because they're so hard to go through bits like crazy.
And I'll just say to your, you know, Wonder City concept, I think probably the closest thing in the world to that is probably Dubai, right? I mean, right now, and you know, it did require a government or a series of very, very rich people to just burn a lot of money to make, you know, the city of the future. But you know, now what they've done is really focused on turning that into a place that people from all over the world want to visit, and they're trying to get money back, right? You know, by making that a place you go vacation, and which is funny because they've had to, in order to make that possible, you know, they had to make it its own basically city state that has its own laws that aren't oppressive like the rest of the country.
I was going to say,
around it, you know,
yeah, they've got a problem there because the people that have the money to spend that they want to attract want to do things that will get them killed in that country.
Right. That's what I'm like. Yeah. I mean, I've got clients who are in all kinds of sandy countries and stuff like that. Been there for a while.
I'm sorry, guys. I got to take the dog out. I'll be right back.
Okay.
We're gonna keep on without you. But yeah, I've got clients all over the place that do stuff, and I feel bad because it's like, fuck, man, you've been in that place for that long, and it's hot. It's hot, sandy, and I'm not saying, you know, whatever. You don't want to go with a freedom that you can't have somewhere else.
Right. Right.
I'm not going to lose my freedoms to go over and be on a water slide in a desert.
Right. Exactly. And I think, you know, it's interesting. They recognize that, right? Which is why they're kind of like going, well, this little Dubai place is sort of the exception to all of our other rules. Mm-hmm. but it kind of creates this sort of like dualism that's really interesting, right? Because the realization is that you can't create the physical city of the future without really thinking pretty deeply about the politics of the future and the freedoms of the future. You know, what is it that you really want? What makes up a great society that will actually maintain something like that, even if you did get enough money together to start it, you know? But that's a different subject. And our country seems to be going in the opposite direction of many of the things that I think make a city like that successful. But I mean, to me, like when you talk about future stuff, well, first of all, I'll say this. When I go through coaching process, I have a curriculum that I've written that takes people who are technically minded through the process of helping them make the transition to being people minded. And in that, one of the big things they have to do at the beginning, and almost every one of my clients really struggles with this. The first thing they have to do, module 1, is basically, it's called The Only Thing You Can Control Is You. Mm-hmm. Right. And so if you want to become a great leader, you need to become somebody who's worthy of being followed. right? And that's about, finding out who you are, who you want to be, and and create a process for yourself that gets you to start becoming the person you really want to be.
Rick McKinney and Van Driel.
Right. Yeah. And so these are high school teachers. One's a coach with us, but was our wrestling coach. But Van Driel was our science teacher, physical science teacher. Great guy. Um, and and uh, and so one of the things that we tackle in that first module is creating a vision for yourself, and then also for the people that you lead, for your department, if you're in a management position. And what we do when we go through that process is we never go beyond, at this point, we never go beyond 3 years. So we create a vision for what we would like things to look like, and how our department and our lives would like to we'd like our lives to be operating 3 years from now. And what we found is, it used to be that we would make 5-year plans, 10-year long range plans, organizations and stuff. It just doesn't work anymore, because you just can't predict with any kind of certainty what's going to be happening more than 3 years out. And that needle is moving faster and faster now with AI. So I'll just throw this out there. If you're asking for my future sort of prognostication about this technology, it's something that excites me and makes me fearful at the same time. And because the trajectory that it's on, and the connectedness of the systems, they naturally, people want to connect these systems to each other to become one big, huge AI brain out there. And there are people out there working on that, right, that diligently. Most of them are Americans or Europeans working in China, because China, they can be physically close to the physical components that are necessary to run the software. They can fabricate as cheaply as possible chips and that sort of thing to support the software that they're putting together. But basically, if you ask any of those folks, what they'll say is that we're heading towards what they would call the singularity, which, somewhere in the future means the AI gets to a point where it's solving Nobel level problems, human problems, every minute or less. The things that it takes humans as teams to solve, really smart humans to solve in a year or many years of their life's work, are going to start getting solved by AI very, very quickly. And then what opens up is the possibility of free energy for all, and these.
No, it's much more frightening than that.
I was going to say, anytime the closer you, how's that line go? The closer you get to God, the more the devil shows up.
Yes.
I think that.
Yeah.
10 years ago, there was an article in Time magazine. They reversed aging in mice. 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Now,
so this stuff is coming faster than, if you ask the people who are on the forefront of this, they'll give you conservative answers like, well, we think it'll happen somewhere between 7 to 30 years from now.
That means realistically 7 months to 3 years.
Exactly.
Shave a couple of numbers and words off, right?
They're not accounting for an exponential curve at this point compared to what we're looking at. Looks like a flat line. There's no mathematical term for a base 1000 curve. Well, there might be, but I don't know what it is. The statistical probability that we are all going to live past the age of 200 is high. Very high, frighteningly high. So high that it creates conflicting thoughts in my head about such things. I'm just not sure how that's going to work out. On the bad side, like Tim was talking about, moving to a singularity type event, governments want to use this to micromanage every person on the planet to make them the perfect drone.
Yep.
Unfortunately, when they get that ability, it's going to fail, because if you have this perfect singularity system that will allow you to control everything, a toothpick in the wrong place is going to bring everything crashing down. One computer virus, one whatever. You know what I mean? And that's my big hope, is because as much as they want to try this level of control that's not possible, they're going to find out why it's not possible in the best way. Right?
Yeah. And that circles me back to Tim too, because I'm gonna use my hands a lot here on this one. But as Tim was introducing himself, I'm thinking, okay, you're pretty close to me in the sense of got other things going with, like, so I've got four books in the work. The one new one that we were talking about last night, another one about veterans being the hero of their own journey, so finding themselves within. The third one is about teams, so great team, small things, great teams doing great things. Right, small teams doing great things, something like that. Then the fourth one will be more towards what Tim's talking about as far as getting the youth involved. So like entrepreneurship and things like that, and being able to, like, let's say in any ecosystem, you have to have bees, you have to have flies, but then flies eat shit and they're useful, whatever, for eating shit, and they die 6 weeks later. Bees are very communal, and they've got a job to do, and they only have territory, all that kind of stuff, and they stay in their lane. So I think more bees, and the people I want to be around are bees. We want to be more communal, and we, especially the top tier of people, like in the military, there's 3 tiers. Tier 3 is your average grunt, average Air Force person, whatever, 19-year-olds, whatever. And then you start getting into tier 2, which is certain level special operations. Tier 1's, even tied with special operations. So not to get too deep into it, but the people I like to be around are like tier 2, tier 1, knowing that, hey, we're doing really, really cool shit to the best of our abilities. And one guy put it this way, where it's like, we're trying to help the best, the most, the fastest. Trying to help the most, the fastest, in the best way, or as we can. But my conundrum from being, just to give you guys a little bit story, my conundrum from being in Afghanistan was, okay, here I'm flying missions every day, good missions, but I should be at my own kitchen table, making the world better from my kitchen table, as opposed to from a helicopter thousands of miles away. So I got out and made that decision of doing that. So I believe that America, or the American dream, is the best out of what we got currently. Anybody else out there is doing better. And it leads us the most towards more freedoms, but we have to start micro local, inside my own head and my own heart, at my kitchen table with my own family, and work out from there. And it sounds like Tim and I are on the same life path. But that's why we're joining forces in this call today, is to go, you know what? That's what we are doing. There are good people out there. And you heard this, where good bad times create good men. Like somebody else said, no, that's fucking bullshit. There's always good men. There's always good men.
Yeah.
They're just appreciated at different times. Like right now, white man bad, but 1,000 years ago was a different story, whatever. But we're the people who are conservative, the good moms, the good dads, the good preachers, the good, there are good people. And those people who do good things, it's going to stack up behind them, and you'll be able to see that and go, wow, Albert's helped all these people with all this money. Well, that means that he's doing the right thing every day. Yeah, to the best of my ability. Tim's doing great things, stacking up behind you, etc. So but it has to be micro local first. But that's what's crazy about now, that we do have ChatGPT. We do have all these things that can connect us faster. We've got our phones, and I'm pointing that over here. But I know a lot of us veterans specifically feel the word alone. You're so super connectable, but you don't connect because you get out and you're used to shitting and showering and shaving and sleeping and all the other things. next to somebody for months, years, or decades, and then you get out of the service and think that, oh shit, where'd all those people go? Where's all those noises from my day? And now I've just hearing a bunch of crickets. and they have a hard time. So that's why that's why I'm doing the podcast too, with them moving forwards, that the next part of their life is the best part of their life. And let's keep moving forwards. So that's another one of the F words, forwards. So but yeah, so what do you guys think about what you're hearing from me?
Yeah, I think it's great, Albert. I mean, it's one of my big takeaways from my 4 years in the Air Force. It was something I would never give back. I learned so much. I wasn't in a place to go to school at that time. Didn't particularly have a good work ethic until I went in, and that they taught me that. But really, it was around realism and relevance, right? Because they're really good at pointing you towards something and saying, this is a good mission, right? This is important. And they do it throwing you together with a bunch of people where you're all in it together, right? And that's where those bonds get formed. And it's a lot of organizations, a lot of situations in normal life in the United States are not like that. They don't manufacture the opportunity to have that feeling of we're all in this together and we're all pointing towards a mission that matters. And so there's a lot of people who go through the military and they experience things in the midst of war and other missions that they have, where they see the ugly side, where the things that they're being tasked to do are not good missions, right? And yet they have a job to do and they have to do it. And those, a lot of those people who've gone through experiences like that come out away from their military experience somewhat disillusioned, for good reason. And like you're talking about, people come out of the military having been hurt, having had some damage to themselves that they'll never totally recover from, and they need help from the VA. And if they don't get the help that they need or that they should be getting, the compensation that they should be getting, disillusionment, right? It's like, hey, I gave up this forever for this mission, and now you're not going to take care of me, right? But I think, when you put it all together, I think that's what I try to do, is going through the programs that I do and the work that I'm doing is helping people understand, how to create community, how to make real human bonds. I think that's more important than ever in a tech enabled society, because you're you're right, everybody's connected, but nobody has a real, people are losing real human connections. This sense of we're in it together. We care about a thing we're doing together. We care about each other. We've got each other's back. Those things are not as prevalent in life today as they used to be and as they should be. And so it's up to leaders. But that's one thing great leaders, I think, do is great leaders manufacture environments that make sure those things happen so that people have that mission, they have that human connection that they really need. And the more tech enabled we get, the more important I think that human connection in those types of situations, fostering those situations, becomes more and more important. But I think you're doing that with your business, right? You're bringing people together who have the same mission.
That's the core issue.
It's great.
Can you guys hear me? Am I muted?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
You just touched upon the core issue in my brain, and that is, if you study what other people have written about leadership, all of a sudden you really rapidly get into the different types of leadership, right? Well, we have all experienced that if the leader in question is not leading from the front, if they are not leading by example, nobody respects them. You just, you're just another manager telling me what to do. You don't even know if what you're telling me what to do is what you need. How does a CEO in a modern company lead by example or lead from the front?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult, right? Because I think in past context, leaders were able to get their hands dirty and get in
Yep.
with people that they were leading, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in most contexts today, you don't see that. You have to manufacture that sort of environment, and what becomes more important and more important for a leader to do is, in order to get in to the environment with the people that they're trying to lead and sort of promote this "we are all in this together" kind of idea. The way you do that as a leader is to come up with is to really attach yourself to a mission and a vision that is difficult to argue with, that everybody can get on board with, that is creating some huge good in the world. And then the way that the leader really shows people that we're all in this together is to put that mission, that vision on a pedestal, not themselves, the vision and the mission. If they put the vision and the mission on a pedestal and they say, we want to get that, we want to get there, we want to create this, we want to foster this, and can say, yeah, people say, yeah, I want that too. then the mission is the thing that you're driving towards, and you can do that together. If you're the person on the pedestal as the leader and you're saying, just do what I tell you to do, that doesn't work in today's context at all, from a productivity perspective and from a human perspective. So you have to kind of, and that's why I say when I work with people who really want to be great leaders, but they really struggle with that first piece, I make them come up with a vision personally for their lives, what they want 3 years from now, and for their department and for the group that they're leading or their organization. And it's a struggle for them because honestly, most of them have never thought that way about life at all.
No, it doesn't even occur to them. I remember doing training with IT departments, showing them how to use tools. And I'd say, hey guys, if you're really diligent about this, we can all get paid to play video games for 7 hours a day. And CEOs would get fucking pissed.
Right.
And I'd be, let me get this straight. If I can find a way to take 7 work hours out of the day and free it up so that you guys can be playing video games and still get the job done, you're going to be angry. Yeah, they should be working. So how many more clients do you think you can get if your employees have 7 out of 8 hours of a working day free? Then some of the smarter ones, light bulbs, would start to come on. Oh, we can get a lot more clients and make a lot more money. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
If the mission is what's out front, right? Yeah. If all the people in the organization think that the mission is to get the work done that's put before them, then they're gonna go towards, how do I get this work done as simply and easily as possible so that I can do things I really care about, right?
Oh my God.
But if the mission of the organization is the thing that they really care about, then when they free up time, they'll go after freeing up their time so that they can do things that only what they can do to further the mission.
No matter what technology we have, there's nothing that's going to put more hours in the day.
Right. And so the second thing that I always tell, that leaders need to understand about how to make this effective and really connect with their folks is, once you've established the mission and basically sold that mission to your people and gotten them on board, saying why this is important, why you want to be a part of this, of accomplishing this, and that mission is a separate thing from yourself, then step 2, again, a really difficult thing, but step 2 is you as the leader have to be the first to publicly sacrifice for the vision
Mm-hmm.
and for the mission. So that's how you get down deep into it. Now, once you've established the mission and people go, yeah, we want that, we want to be a part of that, then you go, let me be first to sacrifice something I care about to further that mission. And when you do that in front of the group, then all of a sudden everybody else starts going, okay, so the way that we accomplish this mission is to sacrifice something for it.
Yeah.
And then when everybody's willing to sacrifice to accomplish that mission, that's when things start happening, right?
Makes me think of like that the Marvel Endgame, right, where you got the key players that you're talking about there. You got there's always good and evil, superheroes, supervillain. So you got the bad purple guy, and then you got the Doctor Strange who can zoom through time and all that kind of stuff. And then you got, let's say, Tony's the CEO, right? Iron Man's the CEO. And so with that conflict that's going on, the Doctor Strange, the guy who goes through time, says, well, there's millions of times that I've done this, and only one time it works. And Tony's like, well, what happens? He's like, well, I can't tell you, because if I tell you, it's not going to happen. Right. So it's like, I think that going to our complete agreement, I think the three of us really agree on this, that like, let's say Doctor Strange is a guy who can zoom in and zoom out on time. Okay, if you want this as an outcome, well, then you're going to have to do some tough stuff, man, or maybe some easy stuff, whatever it is. You have to do it a lot of times in order to get there. And you have to have a team and a shared vision, shared mission, shared values, of course. And you may have to either sacrifice a lot or sacrifice yourself to get there. And that's what's weird about where we are right now with, let's say, maybe post-Vietnam is where we stop throwing just humans at war, and we stopped losing so many family members at kitchen tables, where I think people just started getting, human nature is, okay, somebody died and let's keep moving forwards. But we haven't lost a ton of people over the past 20 years, but we've lost a lot of, they're in pain now in weird ways. Veterans are pain and alone and all that kind of stuff, and betrayal and all these other kind of words that are emotional. And it makes me wonder, especially now since technology is so fast. We know what's going on at the southern border. We know what happened with leaving $85 billion worth of our shit in Afghanistan. No accountability. We know that the evil is coming, that the elites want us to all go away. And some guy from somewhere pulling some puppet strings is saying that they want the world to be under one rule. You're going to eat bugs and like it. You're going to own nothing and like it. Whereas American people are going, go fuck yourself. No, we're not. But that's there's always a short list of people. There's only 52 signatures, from the many days back. There's only like a very few handful of founding fathers of America who went through shit that probably is way more extreme than all of us on this call or anybody in the audience has been through. George Washington, Jefferson, those guys went through way more fucking shit than you and I do. But now we know that history. We know history. We've got all this technology. We know that we've got badasses in good way and badasses in bad ways. There's going to come a time to where, and I think that time is coming soon, where somebody has to get poked in the eye or even die for things. And I'm turning that back over to you guys to find out what your thoughts are on, like you said, Mike, that you could put one fucking toothpick into whatever, a machine, and it doesn't work anymore. However, it's a whole new thing when you put a toothpick or a pencil in some dude who's what do you call it? Fucking Nazi or whatever. Like, you're out here fascinating. Where do we go from here? Where's America and the world going?
All right, let me preface this statement by saying hello to our NSA agents. How are you guys doing? If you send me an email, if you send me an email with your address, I'll have coffee delivered. And everything that I'm about to state is research for my novel and Minecraft server. This is in no way anything real.
Yeah. I agree.
But if I wanted to fuck some shit up really bad, I'd get a whole bunch of those small hand-sized drones, put a laser pointer on it, jump up the capacitor to about 100 watts, so it's making 3 to 500-watt shots, each lasting for 1/1000th of a second. Train it on uniform recognition, and have it key in on certain specified radio frequencies, like the ones that are used by police and law enforcement, and tell it to blind them all. Then all I got to do is get them in one space, which is really easy. Calling a bomb threat. They all show up, release a few of these things to go out. They start blinding people in uniform. As they panic and hit their radio keys to call for backup, that just brings in more people to, you could wipe out a major metropolitan police force,
right?
Local, federal, county, sheriff, local, everything in a couple hours.
Your book sounds awesome.
Yeah, when's that coming out?
There's no good way around this. You can't use EMP or projectile anything, because 10-cent copper foil will shield it from electronic attacks, and something the size of a cell phone flying around. How are you going to hit that with a rifle? You're not going to hit it with a rifle. You're going to have to use a shotgun or a net gun or something else. And these things are so cheap, I can have 200 of them in the air simultaneously. Right? And they're just, hey, operate and hit the eyeballs of every single, uniform wearing person until you get down to 10% charge, then go land on your recharging pad that I've hidden somewhere. Recharge as soon as you're at 100% charge, go out again. Rinse and repeat times 200 drones. Somebody can take down amazing amounts of issues. And that's even worse than killing them, because now each one of those departments has to care for them medically and has to pay for their
That's good.
disability, etc., insurance, whatnot, right?
Yeah.
And on top of that, they've got to bring in all new people and train them. So the cost of doing this is just exponential. And the only reason something like that hasn't happened is because they haven't pissed off the right person yet.
Yep.
Yikes.
I bet they probably sit around like it's like that movie Armageddon, right? What, you're NASA, you guys think shit up. You got a whole team of people just backing you up, thinking shit up. I guarantee you somebody in China or whatever, somewhere else, the World Economic Forum, those motherfuckers are all sitting around thinking shit up.
Well, here's the issue. Creative people do not do well with military type structure.
I think that may be some divine intervention right there. Because that was my point to even my pastor the other day. I said, hey, there are people. Now, I'm not a guy that shoots people in the face, but I was trained to. I didn't. I do crazy helicopter shit. I'll come get you. I promise. But Rangers, they will legit chew through fucking walls to come get you.
Yep.
And Rangers tell me, they say, hey, if a SEAL gets hurt, it's not SEALs that go get SEALs. It's fucking Rangers that go get SEALs. And when Rangers get hurt, it's Rangers that go get them, not SEALs. So that's them, not me. Yeah. But that's what I was bringing up with my pastor. We've got the people who know firearms. We've got the people who know freedom. And we've got the people who know like aviation and bombs and all this kind of stuff to be able to just completely level a bad guy. And that's tech people behind the scenes, but it's also faith. It's faith driven. So here's my question to you guys, with faith being the point we're going to chat about now. When do the preachers and pastors start being like, say, hey, if the devil exists, well, then so does God, but say it with fucking conviction that if God exists and the devil exists, then there's true and evil, there's truly good and there's truly evil. We're fighting evil right now. So it only takes good blinds and wins on evil, but we have to come together and actually say that. And I think a lot of pastors have a hard time, or faith leaders in America have a really hard time saying that stuff.
There's a problem that when I use the term the church, obviously that is every denomination, every group of denominations, however you care to look at this, they have a huge problem that they are not willing to look at or talk about. And they have been poisoned by the exact same thing that poisoned the the left, and that is, it's the weaponized emotions. Specifically, the big ones are empathy and sympathy. Feminism is probably the best example of this, right? Take a feminist talking point, any one of them, and I can show you how they're lying about it. And they are very clever about this. They craft their lie out of nothing but shreds of truth that were deconstructed from other places and woven into a lie somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
The way I like to think about it is, the only time they will tell you the truth is to get you to believe a lie. The best example of that I can think of is the wage gap.
Mm-hmm.
It's very convenient how for 50 some odd years, they left off the fact that they were comparing women who are working 35 to 40 hours a week to men who are working 45 to 55 hours a week. Yep. Taking the average of those two salary results and then comparing them, of course, there's going to be a massive difference. That's an extra 10 some odd, more than 10 hours a week. And most of that 10 hours a week is coming in at an overtime rate,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yep. Not
to mention, we're also comparing, housekeepers to doctors, right? Because that wasn't taken into account. On the church side, the way I look at this is, I am sure none of you can count the number of sermons that you have heard based upon turn the other cheek, right? Countless. How many sermons have you heard about, if you do not own a sword, sell your cloak and buy one? Has it been one? Either one of them. Have you ever heard in church a sermon about, if you do not own a sword, sell your cloak and buy one? I have never, not once. And yet, the majority of Christian leaders, if you talk to them about such things, they'd like to say that Christianity is a pacifist religion when it comes to this, because you're supposed to turn the other cheek. And they will very conveniently omit, whether intentionally or because of complete ignorance, the fact that there are very explicit instructions in the Bible to have a sword and to carry it, to be prepared for such eventualities. So how are you going to correct an entire institution equal in size to government?
From your own kitchen, I guess, right?
That's the only answer is in small groups like this, and say, you know what, sorry, you guys are not doing what you're supposed to be doing. We're going to have to take over for you.
Because I've not seen, I know from my watching YouTubes and stuff like that, I have a handful of SEALs and Rangers or Green Berets, whatever, that have podcasts, stuff like that. Right, namely, Dan Bongino's and stuff like that, Tim Pool's, others out there that are doing things. But I'm not hearing like legit pastors out there talking about the sword. And like anybody, correct me if I'm wrong, but we know what Mother Teresa in the past or whatever. Mm-hmm. We don't know anybody we know the popes and all that kind of shit, but we don't know any American, like, legit.
The closest thing we get are American founding father era people. Like, God, what's his name? That guy from Boston who at age 70 something decided to go out 600 to 1 versus the Redcoats, got shot twice, stabbed 13 times at the age of 78 or something like that, and lived to die at 98.
But I think but you go back to those days, the 1776, I think you're going to have a lot more of the revolutionary time frame. You're going to have a lot more of those people who did do things from the right things from in their own home, around their own table, And they'd share information out at the taverns, the bars, and stuff to be able to go, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing at your table? And then be able to coordinate and move out from there. And it was amazingly effective. I mean, we went from being the youngest country ever to being the best country ever with a lot of money and tech and still high spirits, no restrictions, no barriers to success. And the only barriers are the people and evil. So it's, but
yeah, a large percentage of the founders of our country who were representatives were also pastors.
Yes.
I don't know exactly what that percentage is, but it's pretty, I want to say it was like 40 or 50%.
could you imagine?
I think that sounds about right.
Yeah. Could you even say, is it any of them today? No.
Very few. Yeah, I can't think of one off the top of my head. My guess would there be a couple maybe who were former pastors, but the vast majority of your legislators today are lawyers.
Yeah.
And so, or marketing experts.
I was going to say salespeople.
Yeah, salespeople. Some of them former history teachers, those types of people who study social science and were geeky about it. But a lot of, I think that says something, right, about the path that we've traveled is who are the supposed elected leaders of our country today. And obviously there's a lot that goes into that and how elections are run and who has the chance to win and, how people get the money that they need in order to run in large, especially in the larger elections. They basically, the short answer is they give up their soul in order to get the money that they need in order to win the election. And so by the time they get into, actually win and get into office, they're already bought, people.
I once again, I came to the same conclusion, but from a completely different route. And that is, if I have a great big pile of money, more than I could ever spend on boats, hookers, coke, whatever, right? What am I going to do with it? I'm going to do something that I want to do that is now going to be meaningful to the world, right? I've already satisfied all my selfish needs to the point where I still got money left over. And that's what some of these great big giant rich guys are doing. George Soros, Rupert Murdoch, etc. And so consequently, that means I'm going to go out and I am maybe not necessarily going to be buying politicians. I'm going to simply seek out people who are running for office that are thinking the same way I do. Right. And if I've got enough money, that means over time, the majority of one side or the other are people who think exactly the way I do. And that's an issue because no one person is right about everything. And unfortunately, a lot of people, the basic human nature is to think that you are right about everything. Right?
Well, I'll tell you too, you asked the question, Albert. I do know one pastor who is like what you described. And his name is Brandon Holthouse. He's actually in Bakersfield, California. And I think most of the people who come in connection with him are who aren't members of his church. He was my Sunday school teacher years ago. And then he ended up being the pastor of his own church. And the people who don't go to his church but who know something about him are incredibly annoyed by him. A lot of people talk really bad about him. But he's very, his messages are very focused on current times and future possibilities, and that we have a role to play from a faith perspective to shape the communities that we live in and the politics. But the thing is I think the vast majority of pastors and have gravitated strongly towards staying out of that kind of language. And, you know, I think they figure God will take care of it. You know, and I'll tell you this. I mean, if you're a believer like I am, God will eventually take care of it. I mean,
That would be a good thing. Gates are closed. Sorry, bub.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
in the meantime, you know, I do believe, and I think Mike's right, you know, that Scripture does support that in the meantime we are called. You know, if you've seen my LinkedIn profile, you know that my tagline, my pronouns, so to speak, next to my name in LinkedIn is salt and light. We're called to be salt and light in a fallen world. And a big part of that, of course, is telling people about the good news and of Jesus Christ, and that God loves us, and that He's created a plan for us to be able to be with Him. But I think also a big part of that being salt and light, salt can be pretty darn irritating, right? And it is a preservative.
Yeah.
And that it is our role that we are called to preserve the generations for good, to be irritating where we need to be irritating in order to move the culture in a direction that looks more godlike. And you're right. We're not seeing a lot of warriors right now in that space.
I think Ben Shapiro did an excellent job of explaining this outside the context of religion entirely. And that is, every successful nation on this planet has Judeo-Christian values as part of their cultural values. And I'm not talking about religious ones. I'm talking about the basic shit. Don't kill, don't murder, don't steal, you know, that sort of thing. And that's not a coincidence, right? You know, I mean, you know, you look at that argument, you know, oh, it'll happen if God wills it. I'm pretty sure we have all seen the result of that in the Middle East. Oh, you know, we don't need to practice with our rifles. We'll hit our target if God wills it. Really? You don't think that's why God showed people how to practice stuff?
Yeah.
I was talking about the jumping jack video. You guys probably saw that.
Yep.
Trying to teach the special forces trying to teach them jumping jacks. It's like, oh my God. Some people are more well equipped, but yeah, that's why I think out of all the humans on Earth, let's say you got 1 billion people, just for easy numbers. You got 1 billion people, I mean, or any number of people. You got like maybe 5 or 10% of actually somebody with a heart, mind, and brain. I think there's probably, you guys probably see this too. There's just some weird people out there, just weird shit. Videos of somebody just driving a motorcycle out in the middle of the intersection as if nobody was coming, and they're dead. It's like, what was that? What just happened there? So it just, there's all kinds of weird people out there who don't have a heart, mind, or soul. So, but anyway, yeah, it's
part of that is our technology has removed a lot of consequence from real life, right? I mean, you go back in time and human behavior hasn't changed that much, but you don't die of syphilis now if you bang 1,000 women because you can get antibiotics, right? Medical technology alone, the generation before ours was the first generation to not have a 50% childhood mortality rate because of vaccinations. You know, that was our parents' generation, the boomers, that was the very first one. And I always used to wonder why my parents and everyone else their age was so clueless about things in the world. That's because it had happened so recently. It was still new to them and they hadn't fully grasped it yet, whereas we grew up with it.
Yeah.
Right? We grew up in a world where we didn't watch all of our friends die in school because of untreatable illnesses. You know, that rapidly became a thing of the past. And technology has done so much for us that until we have a history professor put it in context for us, we don't really see it. And even then, you get that kind of thing put into proper context for 100 people, 10 of them will actually understand it.
Yeah.
What's that line? Great men aren't appreciated until they're dead. Some way later. So yeah.
That's such a good point, because, you know, there are so many things that I've seen where, you know, one of the people that really beautifully explains that a lot of times is Jordan Peterson.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who does a really great job of explaining, you know, up until really recent times in human history, you know, the world was a hard place to live in. You know, that we suffer that normal was suffering, was constant suffering. That was life. That was human life for thousands of years. And because of the technology advances that we have, there's a lot of those things that have just kind of gone away, and we've become so used to it, and kids have grown up in this environment, that they have sort of moved out of the realm of reality to a certain degree, where they're so hyper focused on things that don't matter that much, because their base, you know, level of things.
They don't even have an understanding of how out of touch they are.
Yeah, they've never had to, you know, we honestly, like we grew up, Mike and I, hunting for fun, for sport, right? But we've never really, you know, we've never had to hunt in order to live.
Yeah, no.
Right. You know, but that was the way that, you know, in most of human history, that hunting and farming and working your butt off to get that away was normal, right? And so when you have life in that context, you're thinking about things quite differently than what people think about now. And so our thinking is now evolved to this place that is counterproductive in many ways. And
absolutely.
So you've got this, you'd mentioned too, Albert, that whole concept of, hard times, right? Make great men, and, you know, easy times make bad men, right? And this idea of sort of like a cycle, and the pendulum swinging back and forth over time. You know, we're in this really, really weird pendulum space, I think, right now, that something, you know, there's some bad things that have happened over the last couple of years, but I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. But I hope, my hope is that I'm always, you know, ultimately an optimist. My hope is that the pendulum will, you know, something bad enough will happen that will cause the cultural pendulum to swing back the other way again. But
they are absolutely, most people, like you said, that 90% are absolutely just out of touch with reality. The best example of this is you see people saying, we don't need farms, we just get our food at the grocery store.
Oh God, right.
Right. The one that gets me the most is, I remember sitting in a class with a couple of the Division I wrestlers from Cal State Bakersfield. We were up at BC. I forget what class it was. It was something stupid. But the subject of gun control came up, and somebody said, yeah, nobody needs a gun anymore. There's no reason for it. And I'm like, really? So you think you could take care of yourself if one of those two guys over there decided to beat you up? I'm like, oh yeah, I could absolutely take care of myself. And, you know, and I'm looking at Cal State Bakersfield Division I heavyweight who was an absolute fucking bastard and enjoyed inflicting pain. And he's doing everything he can to keep from laughing out loud. And I'm like, you are completely ignorant on this subject. Have you spent 10 years learning how to fight, training against 100% live resisting opponents? Oh, no, you don't need to do that. I can take care of myself. Would you care to put that to the test? Do you want to go step out into the BC wrestling room and find out if you're correct or not? And then all of a sudden you say, oh, no, we can't have that. You don't want to test your theory? You don't want to follow the scientific principle? I am unclear on what we're talking about here because, wrestling mat, wrestling rules, controlled environment. If you don't like wrestling, we can use judo, jiu-jitsu, or boxing or sambo or any of those others. Confined rule set, safety equipment, and they will find out if they can actually handle. And of course, the answer is no, they can't. My car has a better chance of stopping me from changing its oil than one of these people has stopping a trained fighter from doing whatever they feel like doing to them. And they don't understand that that's the reason why firearms were invented. Because, being a big, strong guy who practices fighting all day long is a massive advantage. It is an uncontrollable advantage, right? And that's not even getting into multiple on one, opponent type things, 2-on-1, 3-on-1, etc. Firearms change that dynamic so massively that in Western countries where we have people with guns making sure that bad things don't happen, we were so successful that bad things almost never happen, right? 90% of the crime in the U.S. is gang members and drug dealers killing each other for territory,
Right. Yeah.
right? So unless you specifically go into the bad parts of town, you're never going to be exposed to that. You have no clue that it even exists. And even if you had some sort of academic knowledge that it did exist, you have no idea what to look for.
Yeah. And I think up until this last year, I had always, leaned on, when it comes to gun rights and that sort of thing, leaned on the argument too that it was, the purpose of it being put in place was to protect yourself from those types of people you're talking about, Mike, but also from the government itself, right?
100%.
Because we know what happens when the wrong people get too much power. The way that the government asserts their power is through force. And so the only way to protect yourself is to have at least an equal amount of force. And so that was always the argument that I would lean on. But I'll tell you, like recently in the last year, one of my big concerns is we're going to have some crazy solar flare or something and electricity is going to go out. And we're not going to have it for a long period of time.
Yeah, we're 30 days away from a very bad social situation?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You think you're not going to wish you had guns and ammo if there's literally no electricity worldwide or countrywide or even statewide or citywide in your city? You think you're going to be better off if you have a gun or not? I think, dude, I want
Everybody
guns.
gets real selfish real quick.
Yeah, it's not
All
because
the
I'm
cops
going
with
around,
guns, they're not listening to the phone. They're not even monitored. They're back at
it's
home
not
already.
because
With all their
I'm gonna
fucking
be
guns.
going around killing people. It's because I'm going to be protecting my family, and protecting the people that I band together with to try to make some semblance of a life in that type of environment. But we're a heartbeat away. I mean, we rely so much on electricity. It's crazy.
Magic floating castles.
Yeah. So if electricity goes out for a long period of time, and really I didn't start really thinking that much about that until just a few years ago, living in California, we started having lots of fires. And partly the fires were caused a lot of times by electrical lines going through forests that weren't properly maintained. And that sort of thing. And then, but because of the heat and the dry snaps and the fires we were having, PG&E and electricity companies were starting to voluntarily shut down systems for long periods of time. At one time, we were down for 3 days in Fairfield, California. I was at the time chief communications officer for a large school district there, and I was on the emergency operations team for the city and the county, getting the real scoop on what was going on behind the scenes. And one of the things that freaked me out was them talking about there were times that the fires were coming our direction, and they had no capacity to stop it. They said if the wind blows in the wrong direction tonight, the city of Fairfield is gone, like Santa Rosa had happened just a year or two before that. But they said also, if power is out, if our power is out for more than 5 days in the city of Fairfield, in that particular city, we're going to have a water problem because their water systems did not have enough backup systems, and they couldn't pump clean water to anywhere after 5 days of being down on the power grid.
And there are no water sources in California. There are no springs or rivers or anything that aren't rediverted
somewhere else.
And the vast majority of the population has no understanding of how fragile some of these systems are, that keep our life the way our life is. And that was a big learning experience for me, where I was like, holy crap, I need to have backup plans for my backup plans, you know?
And that's why you're in different states now.
Yes, right? That is part of it. For sure.
There was a series of books I was reading, very entertaining, but the premise was this magical emperor had an orb that floated around their head, and any citizen in the empire could connect to the orb and use its nearly unlimited magical energy to do whatever they wanted. And so a lot of people made floating castles until the emperor was assassinated and the orb went to the underground, and all those magic floating castles came crashing down. And that's what all of our modern infrastructure is. It is a magic floating castle powered by energy, right? All of this stuff that we take for granted everyday life, the light switch at the door, the heater, the refrigerator, etc., all requires constant energy. And that energy has to come through an infrastructure which requires constant maintenance. And politicians like to use that money to stick in their pockets and their friends' pockets rather than actually do the maintenance.
Yeah. I know we're coming to a close here. Let me turn it over to Tim and Mike for any closing statements. We haven't talked about anything. But Tim, anything you've got going on that you want to put out there on this podcast? And we'll make sure that we've got all of your links and stuff. So make sure you email me those so we can put those up there in the bio and all that kind of stuff. And give me any other things, logos or whatever. Make sure we get those. We'll put them up wherever you want. Same thing for Mike. But go ahead, Tim. Fire away.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it, Albert. I appreciate the platform to be able to talk, and you know, it's fun just to have these kinds of conversations anyway. But I just want to mention that on Tuesday, I get the opportunity in Springfield, Missouri, to speak to the Women in Tech group. That is about 150 individuals. Not just women will be there, but that's the group that's putting on the event. And the focus of my talk on Tuesday will be something I'm really passionate about. It's called the 3 dimensions of mentorship. And you know, to me, leadership is probably, you know, great leadership is probably about 60% mentorship. It's about individual relationships, trusting relationships that you build with people that you intend to lead, where you show that you care about them, that you want them to succeed, that you want them to get where they want to go in their life, and then you help them do that. And so, you know, we have a big issue, I think, especially in the tech space and the IT field, where everybody needs a mentor. People need mentors, and there are not enough of them out there who are willing to give of their time. So I'm working on putting together an IT mentorship community that will serve the entire United States. It'll be mainly run through the internet, through Zoom, but people can join it. I'm looking at maybe $5 a month as sort of a subscription fee. The opportunity for mentees, people who want mentors and mentors who want to give some of their time, to do that in an established sort of structured way that's very temporary. It's just like a 6-week commitment to meet weekly for an hour. And this system will match mentees up with mentors based on what skills they're trying to acquire and that sort of thing. So I'm super excited about it. I'm going to be talking a little bit about that on Tuesday with this group of people who I know are really interested in mentorship and starting mentorship programs in their organizations and that sort of thing. And so just wanted to kind of throw that out into the world, that I'm going to be putting a system out there pretty soon to foster that specifically for IT people. And it's something that's really kind of near and dear to my heart, and I know is a huge need out there. So there's a page on my website, you'll get the link, I'm sure, and everything on itbatonpass.com. There'll be a page on there called Mentorship where you can sign up, do an email newsletter sign up, and I will announce when that platform's coming online and how to join it.
Very cool. Appreciate that. Yep, definitely send any of your links to us. We'll put it up on our website and everything too. And yeah, definitely. And keep us posted on that, because I've been a mentor in a lot of different things and mentee, and yeah, it's invaluable. So yeah. Anything else, or what else you got, Tim, before I throw it over to Mike?
That's it for me. I'll let Mike take it away, man.
Mike, go ahead.
Awesome. I have absolutely no links or anything like that at all to share, because it's, believe it or not, it's only been within the last few weeks that I found something worth pursuing. And now I have to find out how to pursue it, because I have just been so absolutely disillusioned with anything corporate. I've just been in this world, in that corporate world too long, and eventually came to the same conclusion Tim did. There's no fixing it from the inside. It's just not realistic.
Too big. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, you live not far from me, so yeah. You got probably my cell number. Yeah, you do.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I'm going to be sending some more links, because the realization I came to is that between the technology that we have and the internet, you can do anything you want to do.
Yep.
I mean, you want to make your living flying around to different places and post videos of you in these places. People are making $1 million a year doing that. I mean,
Crazy.
Can you imagine what our parents would have said if we said, you know what, we want to be a YouTube personality for a travel channel? What are you talking about? Right? I mean, that would have been like trying to convince the Russian government to sell a video game called Tetris. Can you just imagine what that took to go over and talk to a comm block Russian oligarch of some flavor and say, yeah, I want to give you money for this video game? And he's like, what's a video game? So, yeah, now that we realize that truly anything is possible, what's the best thing to do? That's
Listen to what's in here. It's there for a reason.
And talk about it too.
Sacrifice a little bit first. Get your team going. Get a little wisdom.
Yeah.
Keep pushing
Talk
forward.
about it with as many people as possible.
Yeah.
Because when you have an intention and you say, this is what I want to do, voicing that intention as many people as possible will help refine the idea.
Yep.
Because people will come back to you, and just getting it out there and saying, this is my intention, is half the battle to getting there and being successful with it.
Awesome. I'm going to keep in contact with all of you, with both of you guys, a lot more from now on, because the old methods of doing things are no longer relevant. And we don't have the new methods yet because people like us haven't created them.
Yep. Agreed.
Yep.
We will keep doing this. Great line to end on today. So appreciate you guys being here. closing out episode 5, and we'll see you guys next Friday for episode 6.